In a 2019 interview, you said that hate speech is a principle that does not exist. And in 2021, you said that no one should be fired over a tweet. However, just a couple of weeks ago, you tweeted that if you work in the media and uncritically and reflexively parrot the genocidal, Jew-hating terrorist liars Hamas, you should be fired. So why have you drawn a line there? Why do you draw a line for people that you disagree with, but for yourself there is no line?
Oh no, I draw a line for people I disagree with when those people tend to back terrorist groups. So if you back a terrorist group, I don't feel that you are within the boundaries of free speech. I don't think there's no such thing as an Overton window. There certainly is an Overton window. I just think it's very, very broad. I think openly supporting terrorist groups is beyond the Overton window. Also, by the way, if you're parroting the claims of Hamas,
hate speech? Is that hate speech?
So no,
it's not free speech.
Hate speech is not a legal category. Hate speech as punishable by the government is not a legal category. That's a different thing from the idea that I have an obligation as an employer to hire somebody who supports Hamas or Al Qaeda. I certainly do not. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the members of the media parroting Hamas, they shouldn't just be fired because they support Hamas. They should be fired because they're unbelievably crappy at their jobs. If you're parroting the Gaza Ministry of Health, which routinely lies about its statistics, as said by the Washington Post in 2014 and the New York Times in 2014, and still the Washington Post and New York Times are uncritically parroting Hamas, well, at that point, you're really bad at your job. And you should be fired for being that bad at your job.
So it's okay for you to say things like, I know you've come under fire for this a lot, but the Arabs like to bomb, crap, and live in open sewage tweets.
I'm so glad you asked about this. So.
No, I knew this was going to come up, but you then later doubled down on it and said it wasn't just Arabs that it wasn't just. You said there are many, many Christian Muslim Arabs who are wonderful people, just not the ones who oppose Israel in the Israel-Arab conflict.
Yes.
So you are allowed to say things like that about certain groups.
Oh, I think anybody's allowed to say that.
But anyone else can lose their job if they say things.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not entitled to a job. I'm saying that as a general principle, we should be very careful about who we fire and who we cancel and for what we cancel people. That doesn't mean
so you're okay with it for some things.
Well, I mean, I think even on the right, there are certain things where I think that they past the line.
It's crazy how loud the protests in the background are right now. This is outside the Oxford Union, and literally this is right after October 7th. A massive amount of protesters are protesting Ben Shapiro for speaking up for Israel. Just insane.
Window, and you can be fired for that, of course. I mean, I'm not saying there's no line whatsoever. If you come out tomorrow and you start flying a swastika at your place of work, I think that you can be fired for that. But I think that, you know, when we talk about, you know, what I said back in 2010, as you mentioned, I mean, I can read you the rest of the tweets. Okay. In the post regarding Israelis versus Arabs, this is September 27th, 2010. So it's always fun when people pull up tweets that are 13 years old. But since I knew this was coming, we may as well do it. In the post regarding Israelis versus Arabs, I wrote about Arabs who take part in the Israeli-Arab conflict, as anyone who can read knows. Apologies. You're correct. Read slurs about Arabs. Not all Arabs like open sewage and blowing things up. I was specifically talking, by the way, in these tweets about Hamas and its allies. And just to make very clear, Hamas does like living in sewage and blowing shit up. That is actually Hamas's goal. This is why they have all of their resources right now hidden underground. This is why they have hundreds of gallons of fuel that they are not giving to the civilians in the Gaza Strip. This is why Hamas took literal water pipes out of the ground and refashioned them into rockets. I mean, the idea, obviously, that, as I say, even in that tweet thread, that all Arabs are in this category is not true. But it is true that Hamas is a terrorist group that would prefer to murder innocent people and get its own innocent civilians killed than to even care for those civilians. By the way, they openly say this. I mean, this is the part that's crazy. I mean, Hamas actually says this. One of the top Hamas officials literally said today that they do not care about their civilians. That it is the job of the UN and Israel to take care of their civilians. It's not their job. They're too busy in the tunnels.
I just want to touch.
It's such a Ben Shapiro move to bring stuff from 13 years ago just in case they ask about it and be totally prepared for a question on that. Just insane. That's Ben Shapiro in a sentence.
Or on the issue that you said regarding free speech, that you think it's you do think there is a line. You think there's a line where something that someone says should be able to get them fired. Is that not a contradiction of your 2021 views, where you said that no one should be fired over a tweet?
No, because again, I think that when it sure. Sure.
This is such a stupid way to like confront someone. You ask someone, "Oh, well, you said this when you were 5. Do you still believe that? And if not, then I win and you lose the argument somehow." Like just because someone flip-flopped on an issue or has a different perspective now than they did 10 years ago doesn't mean anything really. It just doesn't mean that you won the argument. It doesn't mean that they're totally inconsistent. It just means that then they thought that, now they think this. And pointing out hypocrisies is like the easiest thing to do in the world and doesn't really prove anything.
That's it. It's an overstated tweet. Sure, it depends on the tweet. If you say I support Hamas, you should be fired. If you say I support the Nazi Party, you should be fired. Yes, I think there are certain things that run beyond the boundaries of an employer. Now, I will say that if you said that 10 years ago and people hired you knowing that you said that, and then they fire you when it's rediscovered or uncovered or whatever, I think it's a bit of a different thing because it creates a bad incentive structure.
Okay.
But that's an overbroad tweet, yes.
Recently, you appeared on your show and you said the only solution is for Israel to annex the Gaza Strip and kill enough sons of bitches to make sure this doesn't happen again. Is that not using the same rhetoric, the same bigotry and violent rhetoric that you are accusing others of using?
No, because I'm talking about Hamas. No, I'm talking about Hamas. They should kill as many Hamas sons as bitches as they can find. How many Nazis do you have to kill to stop Nazi Germany?
Do you not make a distinction between Hamas and innocent Palestinian civilians?
Of course I do. You're the one who's not. When I say sons of bitches, I'm specifically referring to Hamas. I've made clear in every single podcast that I have done that civilians that the Israeli government seeks to protect civilians. They do. The amount. I mean, I've seen the tapes. I've seen the actual operations that they do. The attempts they make to protect civilians are so far and away more than anything remotely like anything else in the region or really in the world that to suggest otherwise is ridiculous. And of course, when I'm speaking about the sons of bitches, I'm not talking about normal Gazan civilians who I've routinely suggested ought to be protected as best can be done in a war zone. That's not the same thing. But when it comes to Hamas, yes, I hope that they kill every single member of Hamas. I hope that every single member of Hamas is killed.
But the Gaza death toll is now reported to be over 5,000. Almost half of the population of Gaza is under the age of 18, and those are statistics that have been supported by the WHO and Save the Children. Israel has recently turned off the electricity, water supply, and you've spoken about this issue about Israel and Palestine a lot in recent interviews. You've rightly condemned.
All right, and then she goes off on another clip that I already actually reacted to, but he's 100% correct. And this sort of gotcha that she's trying to play with him is like, you said this at that point, and then you said this, and then you said this. And it's very childish and doesn't prove anything but for the fact that there's no other counterpoint that they have to him. Instead of trying to disprove what he's trying to say, they're just going back to his past and saying, oh, but then you said that back then, and now you're a hypocrite, and now I don't have to talk to you. For more, you can subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. That's buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Thank you, and have a good one.